Hi, everyone. We're waiting for the rest of the folks who registered to join. Um, uh, Take a couple of seconds. Hi, Renato. Just give some folks a few minutes to join. Hey, James. Hey, Danera. So many familiar names and new ones. Wow. Hi, everybody. Hi, Alan Michael and Good Plus Foundation. Okay, I think we should get started. All right. Hi, everyone. It is really good to connect today. Um, I know everybody is super busy, and we really appreciate the feedback that we got from folks, the interest in the webinar, and the attendance. I think we had over 70 folks registered to attend, so it's a full house. Um, so to start us off, I just wanted to share an image and a question with you guys. So what comes to mind when you think of succulents? Um, Very pretty plants. They um, they survive and thrive under difficult circumstances, and I just wanted to see what comes to mind. Folks are already saying resilience. Um, a lot of folks are saying resilience and survival, green. Um, yeah, wow. 60% so far are saying resilience and survival and green. And I think this would set the tone for our conversation today. We're talking about leadership and how organizations and teams, and particularly leaders, can um, work in very difficult situations, in traumatic, challenging, and crises type situations. So I think a succulent would be a good way to kind of set the stage for the day. Um, Quick intro, apologies, about Me, I have worked in the corporate world as well as the nonprofit world. I've been working in nonprofit and international development, international relief, and grassroots organizations for a while now. I have a PhD in global leadership, and I started my career working in business development, finance, and uh, as rewarding financially as that can be, it really felt very empty as far as spiritually and just the passion and the heart of helping folks and working with communities. And I made the decision to shift my career to the nonprofit and grassroots organizing work. My work has definitely taken me throughout the world to lots of places. I've worked throughout the Middle East, Africa, Europe, Australia, of course, as well as the U.S. And the issues I have been fortunate to work with were refugee rights, gender equity, youth empowerment, and economic development. Um, a little bit about Dignity and Power Now. We were founded in 2012, and we're a Los Angeles based grassroots organization. We fight for the dignity and power of all incarcerated people, their families, and communities. This vision and mission of DPN is near and dear to my heart, as well as many folks. Many of us have been impacted by mass incarceration and criminalization of our communities of color. It is something that we feel impacts our communities at large, and we have been working on fighting for rights and power and dignity of families and communities who have been impacted by this. DPN has a very unique framework. We're actually grounded in principles of abolition, uh, healing justice, and transformative justice, which is something that sets us apart from several organizations who either focus entirely on policy or focus entirely on programs, focus entirely on campaigns or health and wellness. We actually have a wonderful setup where we're able to provide all of that, and our principles reflect that. And our programs are centered around health and wellness, activism, and leadership building. And it ranges from transition programs for folks who were just released to working with families who are undergoing trauma because they lost a loved one in jail, as well as working with communities on wellness, healing, and finally leadership building of youth to help end the school to prison pipeline. Some of the recent actions uh, I'll just go over real briefly. I think some of you guys might be familiar with. In February, our health and wellness team held a wonderful expo on Black maternal health. They were amplifying the voices of Black mothers and the values and traditions of the reproductive and birth justice movements. DPN was on hand to provide holistic and wellness healings. In March, it was a historic day for us. The county board of supervisors for the Los Angeles County voted to accept the Alternatives to Incarceration report. And this report is really revolutionary because we are introducing a list of recommendations to adopt a care first, jails last approach. And as the name says, there are many alternatives to incarceration. And we're hoping that by adopting this and adopting the recommendations that we listed, that we would be able to hopefully end mass incarceration as a whole. DPN and the Justice LA Coalition have detailed a roadmap of 114 detailed recommendations that can be used to transform the criminal justice system of LA County. We are actually receiving a lot of requests from many communities and many grassroots organizations around the country to see if they can follow this model and we can help build a similar model or system in their respective states. Currently, DPN is actually leading a class action suit against the LA County and the Sheriff's Department for being criminally negligent and for failing to protect incarcerated people during the COVID-19 crisis. I'm sure some of you have watched the sheriff talk and implicate and accuse folks inside jail, saying that they're trying to get infected on purpose, pretty much propagating and continuing the criminalization of our people, even when they are inside jails. And we're currently leading this class action suit. So, as the webinar title says, we are really just trying to see how do we address this very, very fluid situation, constantly changing, new challenges that we haven't come across. Our teams, our organizations, our communities, our funders, we're all trying to figure things out. One of the things that we hoped to accomplish early on was to actually sit down and re-envision and reimagine what we want our work and focus to be. Dignity and Power Now is not a service providing organization, and as such, we never really provided support or services or items to support families. And what the COVID and the pandemic moment made us realize is that we really need to adapt and evolve to respond to the community needs. And so we started the Emergency Relief Fund. And we have three phases for this fund. The first is to provide essential items. Apologies. The first is to provide essential items to uh, community members. We received a few hundred messages on our emails, our Facebook inbox, and even on our Facebook wall from families saying, I'm taking care of my nephews, my nieces, my children, my grandchildren. I have lost my job. I do not know what to do. I don't know where to turn. I cannot go out. It's unsafe. I'm very worried about getting sick or getting my kids sick, or if I'm elderly, folks were very uncomfortable and scared really for their lives. Of course, you guys remember that there was this issue of many items flying off the shelves. People couldn't find the items they wanted and they couldn't afford it. And as our name says, Dignity and Power Now, we really wanted to make sure that if there is any way we can help folks meet their needs with dignity, we would take it on. So that's our new initiative. The first phase was primarily baby items, so it was diapers, wipes, formulas to families and children. The second phase was more essential needs, and we started asking, what else do you need? And people would say, well, it'd be really great if we can have some pantry items. My kids are home from school now. I'm finding I have to make more meals and I have to feed them throughout the day, whereas before it was during, school took care of that. Maybe some jam, maybe some bread. So in that phase, we started introducing pantry items like jams, peanut butters, bread, canned foods, pasta, um, and also cleaning supplies. A lot of people could not find hand sanitizers, they could not find baby detergent, they could not find cleaning supplies. Masks, of course, were a big need, and toilet paper. No one knows what's going on with toilet paper, but of course, we all know that it was a major need. And then the third stage or phase is where we are now. And this phase actually combines phases one and two. So all the items from phase one and phase two are still ongoing. And phase three, we are conducting needs assessment where we're finding out who needs financial assistance and how we can help folks, as well as provide the phase one and phase two items. We have some testimonials here that we'd like to share with you. You can just go over it real quick, but the real stories behind these testimonials, people we've been communicating with, sometimes on daily basis, people we went out to meet, have shared their stories. It's a very vulnerable moment for people, and our communities are trusting us with their stories and sharing them with us. We've had families contact us, say this is our last night at the hotel. We were from our home. Our landlord said they called the cops on us, and we didn't know who to turn to or what our rights are. So we left. And what little money we had, we used, at a very cheap, affordable hotel. And we're running out of money. And starting tomorrow, we're gonna be living in our car with our children. We've had parents of children with special needs saying they can't provide the support and the medical assistance that their kids needed. We've had folks who were able to reach out and say, I'm actually living in my car. I was able to have my children live with some family members, but so I don't overburden them. I chose to live in my car while my children, live under another roof. So these stories are definitely what keeps us going. It showed that there is a major need for the work that we're doing in this particular project. We're currently working with several partners. Some partners are even on this call on helping with finding housing through the system for families. There is a number, you're supposed to call this number. People can never get through, people can never have anyone answer them, and usually they're told they'd be on a waiting list. So we're hoping to be able to help them kind of, overstep or, go around this bottleneck that many systems actually have. Um, and then I know I just spoke about very difficult circumstances for a lot of folks, but I think it would be a good moment now to just pause and ask you, how are you feeling? Okay, so I see a lot of folks are feeling what I'm feeling. Um, it's wonderful to see some folks are content. That's amazing and very inspirational. The majority of the votes are fatigued and anxious. Um, I think while we get the rest of the votes, perhaps we could take a moment just to take a deep breath. Um, there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of lack of transparency. There's a lot of fear. There's also a lot of grief that many of us haven't had a chance to even address or begin to experience. And it's definitely making us fatigued and anxious and impatient and scared. So maybe we could take a moment just to breathe. Okay, thank you, everyone. We really appreciate you sharing this with us. Next, I wanted to go over some of the internal steps that we took, some of the internal policies that we started adapting. Um, Early on, as far back as I think March or beginning of April, it was still very unclear where this is going or how big or serious it is. And we actually put together an emergency action plan in one place for the team to be able to review everything, potentially any questions they had or any concerns they had. Um, so this action plan was to ensure the safety, the well-being, and the health of our staff members and their families, even before the shelter-in-place orders. And because we are an organization that does a lot of outreach and face-to-face organizing, we needed to let folks know that they shouldn't and don't have to go out to do their work. There is no pressure on them to do that. Our first priority was their safety and the safety of our community members. We also announced that we're releasing payroll early. We were hearing from some of our team members that they couldn't find some items that they had to go out on weekdays to be able to go grocery shopping. The stores were flooded. There were long lines, and a lot of items where the prices were hiked. So we try to release payroll whenever possible. And then we thought a good thing to do would be to offer trainings, things that can help with um, uh, just providing us with support and also tools to go through and to handle the situation. So we offered a somatic training, and it's focused on cultivating resilience. It's for several weeks, and in addition to all staff having access to this training, we also offered it to 10 community members. Um, Next is our self-care policy, and this policy is actually not new. We've had this since 2019. We have heard from several of our partners, our community members, our grassroots organizational partners, and even funders, that this policy is something new, and they really love to learn more about it and see if they can even incorporate all of it or aspects of it. So the policy has been around since last year, but we did update it and have it evolve and grow, especially in light of this moment. So the policy allocates $300 a month for each staff member to use for self-care. And self-care means different things to different people. So when we first implemented this, a lot of folks thought self-care means therapy, and that was wonderful, and we really appreciated having that support and that resource. But we also heard back from team members who were saying, I don't really think of therapy as self-care. I actually think of getting my hair done or getting my nails done or going to a game or going to the movies as self-care. So we wanted to actually be transparent and receptive and respond to that. And as such, we just made it absolutely open in any way people approach self-care, and whatever way it's defined to each of them individually, then we're going to just approach it that way and have a more open and more receptive definition. Also, we're encouraging all staff members to take breaks. We often have to send nudges and say, hey, we've noticed you've been, absolutely on it. We're getting emails from you at midnight. We know working from home is actually putting more of a strain on people. How about you take a break? How about you take next Friday off, or a half a day, or whenever your schedule permits? And we came across a study that was done in the last 2 months of staff members and employees across various industries or types of work, so corporate and nonprofit. And what they found was, on average, people are working 3 additional hours a day now than they did before the quarantine and before like COVID. So what that is telling us is what probably all of us already knew or felt. Perhaps we thought it was just us, but the lack of structure, the lack of working hours, the fact that people are working from home. Also, there's an element of job security. I think a lot of people are worried about losing their job, and hence they feel like they need to, put in the extra mile, show up more, have more deliverables out. We needed to tell our team that you shouldn't have to worry about this. What you should actually worry about is to take care of yourself. So we need you to take breaks. We need you to monitor your workload. As I mentioned, we had new programs that we didn't have before: the emergency fund, the class action lawsuit. There's a lot of new initiatives and a lot of work that we're doing now, and it's really important for us to do, and we're very fortunate to be able to do. But what this translates to is additional workload, and we wanted the team to know that it's actually good to take breaks whenever you can. And with it being part of a policy, made it so much easier than for folks to think, hey, I think I want to take some time off. Should I ask for it? Should I not? Versus it being, embedded in the system or being a policy or a guideline. We certainly felt that people were more comfortable now knowing that it's allowed, and to just disconnect whenever they can. Additionally, all staff members have access to our health insurance providers portal. And one very interesting feature that we found is that they actually make a personalized program for each of us, and it offers help with sleep, stress, a lot of the things that we've been experiencing. I know several of our team members have mentioned they were having issues with really strange dreams, apocalyptic type dreams. And it's really good to know that you have that, and it's at no cost. It's in an app, so you can access it from your phone or your computer, whichever way is easier for you. But it's there as an additional resource. So we also made sure that we highlight this and we mention it to our team. Um, and then there is also the fact that many people now have to homeschool, and that's additional work. You have to be a teacher, you have to make meals in addition to working from home. So we wanted to say that, hey, if you need a flex schedule, go for it. If you want to say, I can't make that 9 o'clock Zoom call because that's when when I'm studying with my child, or that's when I make them breakfast, or I can't do 12 to 12:30. That's when I make them lunch. Whatever it is, we wanted to put it out there and say, we know this is happening, and you already have like a carte blanche, absolute, it's absolutely okay to have a flex schedule and to schedule your work around it. And for the rest of the team has been very, very supportive when a team member cannot meet certain deadlines or wishes to change certain meetings to a time that works for them. So we also wanted to put this out there and have people know that, hey, we know that this is going on, and here's what we're offering. And so far, the feedback we heard was really positive around this. And then, as you know, early on, we've been hearing that folks with underlying health conditions and older um, people, so loved ones, parents, grandparents, neighbors, are at a higher risk of COVID and its uh, the health complications resulting from it. So we also wanted to let people know that we heard about this and we're thinking about it, and here's an allowance where if you need to work on maybe your schedule or your workload or some deadlines or whatnot, if you want to take every Friday afternoon off, or start a little later on Tuesdays because you go grocery shopping for your grandparents, or we just wanted people to know that we're aware of the additional responsibilities and pressure that many of them have, and we're trying to offer some kind of allowance or support to help with that. Some feedback that we received from staff is on this slide. I'll let you guys just give it a read. But the gist of it is, people actually felt that having a break and taking a little bit of time off, it could be an hour a day or whatnot, has really helped keep them organized and has helped make them more productive. So that's really amazing and very interesting feedback that we got. And, it's making us think about moving forward and past this pandemic moment. This is probably an amazing practice that we'd like to keep working on. um, uh, we've often had to nudge and remind folks, hey, have you used your self-care this month? A lot of times we don't wait for people to send us, receipts or confirmations. We just transfer the funds over and we're like, here's your self-care allowance. At the beginning of the month, please make sure you use it in any way you want. But, just a reminder that this kind of support and resources available for folks. Uh, uh, you know, Early pay as well, reminder emails about holidays. Our team is absolutely amazing. Like many teams that work in the nonprofit world, often they can work through holidays and weekends, and we have to remind them that, hey, take some time off, it might do you some good. I should also say that part of the self care that we do when we ask folks to take time off, we let them know that this will not be deducted from their PTO or paid time off, or their vacation days, or their sick leave. A lot of folks feel, they would like to cash out their paid time off. It's a common practice, and we wanted people to know that they don't have to choose between, taking time off later in the year or cashing it out, or just taking time off now. So we let them know that it will not be taken out from that balance, and that this is, a separate allowance altogether. Um, I think it's really important to also note that having a health and wellness team with our organization has been a tremendous asset, not only to the communities and the families that we work with, but always, but for us also as a team and as staff, because it's a constant reminder that, this is one of our main principles. We need to practice what we preach, and also we need to think about sustainability. I'm sure many of you. Wonder what would happen when all of this is over. Coming from the background that I have, working in war zones or very traumatic experiences has been beneficial in the sense that I have seen similar situations where there is a tendency to focus on, the crisis at hand. There's so much that needs to get done. Our communities need us. You roll up your sleeves and, you get to it. But then what happens is after a couple of weeks or a couple of months, you crash, and it usually happens simultaneously. So several members of the team would crash, or there'd be a dip in, their mental health or whatnot. And I'll speak more to that later on. So we also view this as an issue of sustainability for the organization, by taking care of the mental health and support and well-being of the team. That's another way that we all are also supporting our communities by ensuring that we're going to be around. That by making sure that when they need us 6 months from now, or a year and a half from now, we're going to be around and be able to take care of their needs. So, where does DPN and the other grassroots organizations go from here? I think for many of us, we've been in responsive mode. We're responding to what's happening. We're trying as much as we can to carry on with our work, carry on with our personal issues, which are tremendous at this time, but also just cater to whatever issues are popping up. And what we would like to talk about is being intentional about this and having this as more of a strategic approach versus a reactionary approach. Um, so, one of the things I'd like to talk about is leadership during hardship. And I should probably warn you that there might be a trigger topic coming up. But once upon a time, I personally went through a very drastic and shocking situation. And this situation changed how I look at the work that I do, how I look at leadership, how I look at working with the communities, how I even look at working with my teammates and the team that reports to me. I was working for an international relief and aid organization. And as you can imagine, we went to some of the most hard hit spots all over the world, after tsunamis, after earthquakes. And this particular case, we were working with the refugee population. And the refugee context and that of forced displacement is very, very traumatic. You have folks who lost loved ones, you have folks who lost their income, who are disconnected from their families, who had to pack what they can and walk or drive to the nearest border and seek asylum. They no longer have a country, they no longer have rights. Their degrees or their education or their experience doesn't necessarily translate to where they're going. And as refugees, and by definition, they're placed in a temporary or a transition home. So wherever they go and could spend years at a time, that's not really where they're going to end up. And many of them couldn't even, sell their assets or transfer what little savings they had with them. So it's a very traumatic and a desperate situation for many of the people we're working with. And I'm saying this to kind of set the stage for, the fact that the people who worked in this team, and my team there was 300 people. It was a very, very large team. But this team has received a lot of training. We received some, psychological prep on how to deal with this, because, every interview, every meeting, every person you come in contact with is very desperate, is very unhappy, is very sad. And, as much as you want to help, you can't help everyone all the time, and you don't have the resources to be able to do that. You can only try to do the best you can within your ability. So that often, left people very frustrated, very upset. But that's part of the work that we do, as I'm sure many of you can relate. Well, it was one afternoon where we were doing interviews with folks. It was long lines of hundreds of people. It was a hot afternoon, and a young man who was very desperate and very frustrated set himself on fire. And luckily, we were able to rush him to the hospital, and he's okay. And we did a lot of work with him and his family following that, to make sure that they're okay. And we helped connect them to vocational training, and psychological support, housing, medical support, a lot of tools and resources. But um, for everybody who was witnessing that, and for the rest of our team members who weren't there that day but heard about it, as well as everybody who was in that refugee camp, which I think it was around 300 or 350,000 people. This really was a moment where you're flabbergasted. You are absolutely shocked, but you're also absolutely horrified. Um, and in our case, we had to move forward, because the work goes on and the needs of the community go on. But what this situation taught me was that leadership cannot possibly be around, being a fair boss, setting fair deliverables, making sure you reward people accordingly, the traditional leadership model that we all know of, and probably worked with leaders where, follow this model. Even if you're a fair leader, an amazing leader, the truth of the matter is there's a lot of trauma and grief that we pick up when we meet with people, when we hear people's stories, when we try to help. But no matter what we do, in some cases we're able to do amazing work and it's resolved, but in other cases we can only do so much. That feeling of whether it's grief or isolation or depression, or feeling that the work that needs to be done is so immense, there's so much work that needs to happen, and no matter what we do, we're not able to help everybody. Therefore, we must be feeling failing our communities. So these were some of the things that the team felt. My priority at the time was how to contain the impact and how to move the team, help the team to move forward. One of the things that we did was to allow the team to name their trauma. And folks come from different backgrounds, different upbringing, different, cultural and intellectual backgrounds. And, not everybody felt comfortable doing that. And we offered therapy and like therapists and psychiatrists to come and provide support. But there were always folks who were resistant to it, even though it was absolutely confidential. So one of the things that we thought of was, how about using coaching as an entry point to this? And luckily we had access to some amazing life coaches who had a background in psychiatry and therapy. And we felt that some people were even more open to, okay, I can talk to you about my goals, my professional, my personal goals, and you can coach me to go through them. And if the topics of trauma and grief come up during a discussion about challenges, towards achieving those goals, then that makes more sense. So I guess this is all to say that we thought of different entry points, and not necessarily the more traditional, oh, we must offer therapy to everybody. We also wanted to create openness around trauma. We noticed that trauma created isolation. So a lot of team members who, were very social, everybody knew everybody. We noticed that a lot of folks were becoming more isolated now, where it's I'm just gonna do my job, I'm gonna go home, take care of my family, and that's it. And that isolation was a sign of something much bigger, of course. And we felt that healing required and started with connection. So moving on, we implemented several policies, and they were designed specifically for this situation. They were designed specifically for folks who work in traumatic and very severe circumstances, and very challenging conditions. And the impact that this has not only on their work, but also on their psyche and their well-being. So we introduced several things that may not necessarily feel like they're absolutely revolutionary, but when you actually have them out there and people understand that it's there for them to use, and when it's all together as part of a much bigger uh, organizational culture, it does have an impact. So some of the things that we mentioned were that I offered was longer paid time, longer vacations, flex time, working remotely. People oftentimes told me that whenever they were going through this trauma and grief, they felt that a rigid structure was very suffocating, and it created a lot of stress on them. So things as simple as a 9 to 5 schedule, or having to be at the office at certain spaces at certain days was a problem. So flex time and working remotely actually helped create an air of freedom and feeling that there aren't that many boundaries, um, and that there isn't a rigid structure. Um, Also, we offered monthly allowances for childcare, and I would absolutely love it if every organization is able to provide this. Childcare is very expensive, and it's such a big concern and a big problem for a lot of families. And in addition to the financial ease it provides by having that allowance, I think the symbolic meaning of the gesture means a lot more, knowing that your organization is thinking about you and your family and your needs and is offering childcare. At some instance, we actually established like a nearby childcare center for all the children of our team members. And that was wonderful because they were able to bring them to work with them during breaks, go in and check in on them, have lunch together. Um, Also, grief counseling and therapy was available to all staff. We made sure that there's a portal where people can go and sign up without us or HR or anybody knowing who signed up for what. So not only was, of course, the content of the sessions confidential, but even signing up for that support was confidential. We had retreats that dedicated 50% to self-care. We also had a lot of meditation sessions and social activities, and all retreats included families. Your family, your children, everybody would join. And I also learned that despite the fact that most of us sometimes think of a leader as an in command, serious, resilient, tough person who provides stability for everybody and therefore cannot go through trauma, I felt that revealing my own humanity was necessary at this point. And it became clear that it really made a difference. So I voiced my own trauma. I honestly expressed my anguish. I expressed my concerns. I made sure that people see that, if you wish to model after me or after someone else, I personally am going through similar issues to what you're going through. And to also promote openness. Um, so one of the things that is something that we often come across is that compassion seems to be the responsibility of the leader alone and not necessarily the organization. So research demonstrated that your human capacity to show compassion is absolutely universal. But that's not necessarily the case with organizations. And in fact, some organizations suppress the compassion while others work really hard on expressing it. It was estimated that any given year, 15% of all team members will be dealing with a significant trauma. 9 out of 10 would experience a trauma in their lifetime, and 30% would develop an illness related to trauma. In 2020, unfortunately, this has all changed. I think it's safe to say that, we're looking at higher numbers, 70 or 80% of team members experiencing this trauma. Not being able to mourn or grieve for loved ones, the fear of losing your life, the fear for your loved ones. And I think this is something that we need to address on a larger scale. And that's where the compassionate organization comes into play. So, the importance of organizational compassion is it lessens any immediate suffering of those affected by trauma. It does enable the team to recover from future setbacks more quickly and effectively, and it uplifts an organizational structure of compassion, of caring, and it promotes wellness and overall contentment. Um, so a leader's ability, honestly, is not necessarily in being able to be compassionate directly and individually. That's amazing. But as a leader, you really should be able to steer and inspire the organization to develop a compassionate culture altogether. So, real quick, I just wanted to touch on the types of leadership and I think the transactional leader is the most common one that most of us have come across. Someone who is focused on motivating their team. You show me, you bring out about the goals, the deliverables, the KPIs or key progress indicators, and the milestones, and I will reward you according to that. Then there is the servant leadership, and their focus is on nurturing people within an organization, and the emphasis becomes it's not really about what is needed from you as a team member to function and thrive and to help the organization to function and thrive, but it's actually about you as a team member recognizing that you need to do this for the organization. And as you can imagine, not everybody is clear on how that is sometimes manifested. And next is transformational leadership. So a transforming leader looks for potential motives in their team, looks to build ownership of their team, have their team feel like, this organization and this community is my responsibility. And that's the buy-in. You build buy-in. And this kind of leadership permits the leader and the team to engage, to solve problems, hence, the buy-in, and to solve problems in ways that would accentuate end values rather than private personal interests. So that's why transformational and transactional are often polar opposites, because it's not necessarily about getting that raise at the end of the year or whatever personal interests you may have. It is that, but it's also a little bigger than that. And I just wanted to share with you some recommended readings. I have pretty much gone through anything I can watch on Netflix. I know a lot of people are looking for ways to just get inspired and motivated. These are 3 recommended readings. I think it would be amazing if you guys can also share with us some of your readings or your recommendations, either through the chat box or the feedback form we're going to send. And for the next webinar, we have already received some requests and feedback from people on what topics they'd like us to focus on. So these are the initial 3 ideas we have to dig a little deeper into what is leadership, and also to explain an example of an application of transactional leadership, an application of transformative leadership. To talk about more of the policies and practices to make a compassionate organization. We all understand it sounds like an amazing concept, but how do you do that when you have deliverables and deadlines, and there's so much work that needs to be done and often very few people to do it. And last, the best practices on leading during hardship for organizational leaders, so managing directors, executive directors, leaders of teams. There's definitely best practices catered only for you, and I think it would be great if we can cover that. If you have any topics you would like for us to consider for next webinar, include in next webinar, something you read, something you came across, something that you yourself learned about, please feel free to either send it via the chat or email it to us at the end of the webinar. So that's it for me. I don't know if we have enough time, but yeah, I think we do. So any questions?
Sure. So the first question is, what is the first step for nonprofits or grassroots organizations with limited funding?
I think the first step is to actually invest considerable time on fundraising for a specific project. Um, uh, there are some amazing funders out there who would donate or give you a grant for a general operating fund, but you're more than likely to find grants for a specific topic or a specific area of focus. In addition to approaching your existing funders and future and potential funders, I think also approaching partners, other grassroots organizations to see if they can re-grant is also something that a lot of organizations don't do. Dignity and Power Now, we actually re-grant. We're not, a funding organization ourselves, but one of our main goals is to help as many organizations within the community to grow and thrive as possible. So it may not hurt to contact, a partner organization and say, hey, I know you don't provide grants, but do you have any, amounts that you can re-grant to us?
The next question is, how can we stop and transform the fundamental cruelty of leaders and their official actions and policies against POC and working class people?
I think this is a much bigger issue, and I can talk about it for a long while. I think one of the first things is to, if you're a team member or a leader as well, to actually know your rights. To almost all organizations have an employee handbook, so know that. If there is an HR person within your organization, you can always ask them to share with you the laws in your state pertaining to labor and your rights, your paid time off, your severance, I think the first step would definitely be to learn more about your rights and to find out who your allies are. There are several groups around that help people with that. There is the EEOC, which is the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. I have, for one, contacted them in the past as a person of color when I had, certain concerns. So just know your allies, whether it's government or some people may not feel comfortable with that, then grassroots organizations that focus on this. And I think if this is a topic that you guys want us to dive more and dig more into, I would be happy to dedicate part of the next webinar to.
And what has the response been like from funders now that you have an emergency fund?
The response has been great, actually. We have approached some of our existing funders, letting them know, hey, we're working on this thing. We don't know how long COVID will be for. It's not really the kind of stuff that we do. Don't worry, we're not abandoning, the work that we've always done, but we're taking this on. And the response has been amazing. We've also had funders who would find our Facebook and the emergency fund webpage and read the testimonials and monitor the work. And then they actually initiated it and contacted us and said, we heard about this, we'd like to donate X amount.
And let's take one last question. How did you access the needs of staff before implementing your plans?
I think Probably through one-on-ones whenever possible. Our HR is very active and very compassionate. So we, either myself or our HR, we try to spend as much time as possible, listen to people, always have a check-in question at the beginning of every meeting, even though you have a million things to cover in a meeting. Um, we have no problem giving it 10 minutes, even 15, whatever it takes, you know. And whenever we ask, people tell us, people share with us, how are they feeling, how are they doing. And from that, I think it truly informs any policies or new things that we want to introduce to the staff. So when we hear people saying, I have been feeling, very fatigued, very stressed out, I wish I can talk to someone, but it's just, I think that for us was like, oh, well, how about therapy? How about self care? Just kind of responding to the communication that we have with the team, and just being absolutely open and receptive. I, for one, have never found any issues with sharing my recommendations with the board. Implementing a plan like this that comes with a monetary financial value each month for each staff member is not something every board would necessarily accept, or but in our case they absolutely embraced it. So I think just taking a chance on being open and receptive to the needs of team members, and then also translating that into a policy, and getting approval for it and moving forward.
Sounds good. You're going close to time. Did you want to give the info at account for further questions?
I'm sorry, what?
You're running close to time. Did you want to give the info at email address for
Yes.
further questions?
Yeah. So we're going to follow up with everyone who attended with a form for your feedback, some things that resonated with you, some things that you felt maybe I went over real quick and should have spent some more time talking about, or some things that you want us to cover at the next webinar. So far, the feedback we received from folks is to have perhaps a webinar once a month, and we would definitely respond and try to honor that as much as possible. Our email is info@dignityandpowernow.org. It's on the last slide on the right, as you can see on the side, as well as the feedback form that you will receive. So I don't see any more questions. Um, oh, okay. So to send the list of recommended readings, Melanie, yes, I'll definitely do that. Um, uh, I think we've answered most of the questions. If you're like me and it takes a while for you to kind of absorb things and reflect on them, and then you come up with more questions or even feedback, please feel free to let us know. Also, we're in this together and we're always in learning mode. So if you think there's something that you wish for us to cover, or something that you wish to share with us that worked for you as a best practice, uh, please let us know. At some point, we would love to have some panelists join the webinar, so it's not just me talking the whole time. So if you're open to this, we would be really honored to have some of you join us at the next webinars. So I think I answered all the questions. Once again, thank you so much. I know today and the last few days and the last few weeks haven't been easy on folks. There's a lot going on. I do appreciate you sharing with us your time and joining us. Thank you, everyone. And if anybody wants to have access to the PowerPoint, let us know and we can email it to you. Thank you. Bye.